You're listening to the Giant Shoulders Podcast, a show all about gratitude and legacy. I'm your host, Ryan Augustine. Let's get into today's episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Giant Shoulders Podcast. Very excited about this episode today. I have my friend Lyndsay on with us today. Welcome, Lyndsay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. So, Lyndsay, thank you for being here today. The premise of this podcast is gratitude for the people who have gone before you, the giants in your life that you stand on the shoulders of, number one. And number two, it's what kind of legacy you want to leave looking back on your life in 20 or 30 years. So really excited to have that conversation with you today. But before we get into that, who is Lyndsay? Like, give us a 10,000 foot view of who you are, kind of the quick hitters, the highlights of who you are, real quick.
Sure. So I'm normally not one to talk about myself. I always ask questions of other people. So I'll try to be a little more detailed. So I'm 31. I live in Tosa now, and I work in sales, or I do business development. So I work for a technology company, and I work with a lot of companies across the state of Wisconsin, which I get super fired up about. My path to getting here is I'm born and raised. I grew up in Brookfield and went to Marquette for undergrad, did grad school at UWM. I did my MBA there and specialized in entrepreneurship, which is really like one of my goals in this life, is to own my own business someday, probably like a lot of people. And yeah, I have like a very diverse background, which sounds kind of disjointed, but it all makes sense. Like, it's all around middle market, privately held companies. So I started my career in commercial banking, so the financial side. Worked at Northwestern Mutual for a couple of years at the home office as a regional sales consultant, so getting back into sales. And then I wanted to get back though into like a direct sales role. So I sold technology, like what I do now. I was a benefits broker for a few years. So really understand like all these different sides, I guess, of business now, healthcare, managing their employees, again, the financial side. And I really love it. In my free time, I have a little doggie, and she, just like all dog parents, I'm like, think she's the best thing on the planet. I do CrossFit. I used to coach for a while. I'm a yoga instructor. I just have a million things going on all the time.
Very cool. Very cool. How do you find in the midst of all that, how do you find balance between working, you've got a new job, trying to hit sales goals, run really hard, do really well, but also you need balance on the personal side of things. How do you kind of navigate? Is there like a formula that you have, or like a day-to-day routine that keeps you kind of centered and I guess healthy mentally, or like tell us about kind of how you balance that?
Good question. Well, I think I really got to a point where I burned myself out. Like, we went to so I have a sister. We went to a pretty good high school. And so like starting from then, and maybe even before, it's like you just grind, and like you got to get good grades, and like there are certain expectations. And then I think, like a lot of type A people, I'm like, you just like want to do more. And then at some point you can't anymore. And so like two things. I have developed over time a daily routine, which does help center me for the day. And then secondly, like this year, 2020 has forced me to slow down in a way that I probably never would have otherwise. My daily routine is I do meditate every morning. I've been doing that for probably a year and a half. I'm also a big reader. So like a lot of the books I read or podcasts I listen to, successful people will say that, like, do some type of like journaling or say your gratitudes in the morning. But for me, it more so evolved from my yoga practice. So I did my yoga teacher training last year, and like that was kind of the one time where I would like quiet my mind, and I'm like, I need to do, and it's nothing crazy. It's like 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes in the morning. So that, and then I also working out, like I'm a very kinesthetic person. Like I always get feedback. I talk with my hands. So like for me, being able to go and blow off steam, I try to go to the gym like five times a week or so. Like that is also really helpful for me.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think that's really important to build those things in. Especially, 2020 has been an interesting year, I think, for a lot of us, and a lot of the noise and the activities I feel like have kind of fallen away, which has been good for a lot of people, but it's caused us to have to intentionally choose what we want in our life a little bit differently than in years past, where it's just kind of all coming at us. So I think it's cool to hear that you're prioritizing different things and choosing to do different things that kind of make your life balanced and make you feel healthy. And I think that's a really good place to start, because I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed at work and just make that your life. And I think, I don't know, speaking from, I'm, 29 going on 50, I feel like with sitting in this chair all day and getting, sore back and stuff, it's like, oh, this should not be happening. Like, I need to get up and do stuff. So
well, it's weird too, like I think in our culture nowadays, like it was frowned upon to slow down, really, at the end of the day. Like you weren't truly successful unless it was like always a competition of who had more on their to-do list. And so now we like finally have space where it's like you literally can't do stuff on the nights and weekends anymore. And so I think, and it's been for a sustained, like a long enough period of time where people can feel what this means for their lives. And like, it's nice to have a little space and to like get a good night's sleep. I mean, I was not sleeping at night because it's like, let me fit one more thing into my day. And so I hope like that is actually one like blessing, hopefully, that has come out of this year, is like everybody realizes that it is okay. Like you've done enough. And like, maybe this is just for me even, it's like, you've done enough. Like you don't need to pile one more thing on. Like just call it. And it's not a reflection of who you are as a human.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. I think that's really important advice. Cool. Well, great. Thanks for the intro. Now kind of getting into the topic, the core topic of the podcast here. Are there like 2 to 3 people who come to mind when you think of like where you are right now in your career, where you were in your career, or where you are in life, that you feel like these individuals have really kind of propelled you forward, mentored you? Like who are those couple people that stand out for you?
Yeah, I thought a lot about that in advance of this call. And so one of the jobs that I worked was really horrible. And every single morning I watched this like 5-minute YouTube video called Unbroken. I don't know if I've ever told you this before actually, but I'll send it to you actually after this.
Okay.
And basically it just like pumped me up for the day. And it just says like every one day that you push back your dreams, like every one day you don't do what you're supposed to do or what you want to do, it's pushing your dreams back. You don't know how long. And it just like got me in the right frame of mind. So maybe that's another ritual, because I do it today now too, even though I really love my job.
Cool.
But another thing that was in this video is, it was a Steve Jobs quote, and they said, like, you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And so, like, for me, there are, like, I don't necessarily have a mentor. That's actually something that I've been wanting for the last, like, year or two. But there have been these, like, pivotal moments and certain people in my life that have changed everything. And it's so clear when you look back. So the first person I would say, so I've been doing business development again for like 10 years. That's like how long my professional career is, which makes me sound and feel old. My very first job out of college when I graduated from Marquette is I had this job at PNC, teed up, PNC Bank. And they were like just opening this, the market here in Wisconsin. So I love that. It was like, it felt very ground floor. You're doing a lot of education on the brand, and it was a rotational program. So like a lot of companies, they'll do that for new grads. You can like try a bunch of different things out. Yeah. And in one of those rotations, I was paired with one of the top business bankers on the team, because she was also a female, the only other female, which is literally why I think that happened. But that's, a conversation for a different day. So her name's Heather. She's like literally my best friend to this day. And There wasn't ultimately, long story short, there were 2 tracks that like after we did this 9-month program that you could go down. And I didn't want to do the branch management track. I wanted to do business banking. Like I am so passionate about business. And they were like, well, nah, there's like nothing that like we can really do about it. And she marched into that sales manager's office and she was like, these are the reasons why Lyndsay is going to get this position on the business banking team. I was 22 years old. You know, I was calling on these companies that the guys that owned them had been owning it longer than I'd been alive. Like I was probably unqualified for the position, but like she believed in me. And like I don't know that anyone has ever believed in me like that before that moment. And had my back like that. And like literally, I feel like that is one of those like breadcrumbs, as I say, or like one of those pivotal moments. And like it has totally changed my career. So like, and you know, again, we have remained just friends at this point because there are so many, she's about 10 years older than me. And there's so many things I admire about her, from how she speaks to like how great of a listener she is to how she pitches deals. And like, I guess I'm just kind of always listening for that and the people that I admire in my life. And like, one of the reasons why I took this job, and then I'll finish because I've been talking for too long, is like, I kind of realized like you become who you surround yourself with. And I always want to surround myself with people, whether it's friends or people I work with, that are better than me. And it's like, you always like take nuggets from different people. Like my other great friend, Emily, she has taught me, like, I'm just so down to business and so black and white. And she like just has the biggest heart on the planet. And she's a killer salesperson. And she's taught me the importance of like becoming friends with people and like build, like I never had time for that before. But like at the end of the day, that's what life is about, is relationships and connection. And like she's taught me that and how to do that because we weren't like really raised that way. So yeah, and there are probably a couple other people along the way as well, but those are some big ones that stand out.
I love it. I love it. So before I ask you any follow-up questions, tell people about the breadcrumbs.
Okay.
I think it's
like
super cool.
Like I am a big fan of always finding something to say yes to. Like I don't believe in saying that whole thing of like say yes to everything, because like then you're just gonna be like giving your energy out to like things that maybe aren't important to you and you don't align with. But like there's always more, I think, to agree with in the world than disagree with. So like, for instance, you know, you go as a salesperson on a lot of shitty meetings, okay? But it's like, there's always a nugget, there's always a breadcrumb somewhere, or like you have a phone call, or you like are in an elevator with someone, or like even at the gym, okay? When you're like sweaty and no makeup and like not thinking anything, and you meet someone like, or that really bad sales meeting, like it's never bad. Like there's always something that can be taken out of that. And like, that's the breadcrumb, like, and follow those breadcrumbs. Like, you know, maybe you met that person because I'm supposed to connect them with someone else, or they connect me, or you meet them 5 years down the road because Milwaukee's so small. And so, yeah, it's like, and again, it all kind of goes together. Like, you know, Emily was pumped up about real estate. And so I'm like, okay, like that's never intrigued me before, but I'm going to educate myself a little bit, follow that breadcrumb. Like she came into my life talking about this for some type of reason. And now like I sold my house and I bought a duplex. I'm going to buy another one next year. Do you help me with that? So it's like, just follow the breadcrumbs. You never know where they're going to lead.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think in my personal experience over the last couple of years doing what I've been doing, that's I've never been more aware of that. I didn't really call it anything, but it's just kind of like, as a salesperson, as somebody who's trying to connect with other people, meet more good people, the more of those you can leave and the more of those you can kind of be intentional about, the better. So I think that's a really cool concept that I think most people are generally aware of it and they appreciate that, but to kind of I love the way you define it.
Yeah.
And, that's cool.
Like
okay,
we
cool.
don't call like Emily and I after like, cause she's in sales now too, like I said, it's like we don't call each other after a meeting and we're like, that was such a shitty meeting, and like get down on yourself, because that's really easy to do. It's like you beat yourself up. It's like, that was a breadcrumb. Like, so just,
Sure.
you're totally reframing. And again, that's what life is all about too. It's like managing your mindset.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. You said some really cool things. And so a couple things I want to touch on specifically with Heather. I think having somebody in your corner, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, or even somebody who you report to kind of on a business relationship level, is so important. Because I don't think as a young employee, especially, I don't think we realize kind of the potential we have and some of the directions that we could go, without somebody telling us those things, encouraging us, and then advocating on our behalf, to help pull us in that direction and push kind of obstacles out of the way, right? And in this instance, you didn't intentionally go seeking out somebody in this realm, but Heather dropped into your lap, and it sounds like you guys hit it off really well, which is awesome. Are you like, do you feel like seeking out that now in new roles and in new situations kind of in life would be a valuable kind of thing to do? How would you do that? Like to kind of talk about that a little bit.
It's a really good question. I have a desire to find a mentor for that reason, because again, a lot of the people that I look up to that I like don't know personally, but just like super successful people on the planet have talked about that, because like a mentor, ideally they should be like, elevated, and they can show you perspective that you don't have. But like my initial reaction to what you said is I have like a really hard time asking for help and accepting help. And I think, I was thinking about that too in advance of this. I think a lot of people are that way.
Yeah.
And so like I would never like go ask for someone. And again, I think this is like how I was raised in like a German family, where it's like you just like you make it happen. And I do believe in that. Like I own my life. I take accountability for that. But like it's okay to like receive. And I think that is another thing I learned from yoga, honestly. Like there's a yin and yang, there's like an in and out, like you can't give 110% of yourself and like never accept anything. Like it's not sustainable. So I like want to be better about that. But it's funny, like I'm so hyper focused on that for everybody else. Like and I think all of us are that way. Like I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but it's like, we as a society, we like hardly can accept compliments, let alone someone, you know what I mean? So I like want to get better at that, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's so true. I think it's interesting to think about it from two perspectives, right? So from one perspective, you going to ask somebody for their help. It's humbling, because it's like you're asking like, hey, I could use your assistance in this area, whatever that is, your advocacy or something like that. But on the other end, like if you were receiving the ask, it'd be kind of an honor to be like, wow, somebody's coming to me and they think I have, some nuggets of wisdom to give them. Like that'd be kind of a cool position to be in. And so I think we've got to like get out of our own way in a lot of ways and like be able to ask people, because I think a lot of people would be willing to give of their time. And a lot of, we could kind of make some cool asks of some people that, you might not ever be able to get on the radar otherwise. But if you're willing to be vulnerable, I mean, who knows what could happen. So that would be kind of a cool like experiment to do.
Here's my follow-up question for you. Like in terms of your dream with this podcast, knowing we know people want to help, what are you going to do as a result of this now? Like maybe reach out to some people that you thought like, oh, they'd never do it, and like make the ask, right?
I actually just connected with Jerome Bettis on LinkedIn. So he's going to
That's amazing.
So he's gonna
Yes.
be my next ask. Who knows if he says yes, but this is my accountability to at least ask him because we're
Yeah.
now connected on LinkedIn.
So yeah, you have one takeaway from this call.
I'll tag him in the post. Awesome. So Heather and Emily, those two come to mind. So those are the shoulders of the giants you're standing on, Lyndsay. Right?
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 20 years, fast forward 30 years. Looking back then, what do you want people to say about Lyndsay? What do you want people to, like the people who are looking up to you saying, hey, that's my mentor, or that's the person whose shoulders I'm standing on? What do you want them to be saying about you?
This is such a great question also, because this year in 2020, I went to 2 funerals, and driving away from both of them, I was like just bawling, and I'm like, they were such profound experiences because of what everyone was saying about these individuals that passed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is life? Like, literally none of this matters. None of it. Like how we look, how much money we make, if I beat someone on my sales team, if I close a deal, like these things that we think motivate us. And I'm like if I died tomorrow, what would people say about me today? And like, I don't even know the answer to that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get all upset. So I've like thought so much about that. And I would say again, 2020, it's like you have a lot of quiet time and a lot of time to think this year. And I realized that before I was like keeping myself so busy to make myself feel like I had purpose, like coaching classes and teaching this and doing that and like working all these hours. And it's like, anyway, so I've thought a lot about that. And like, I don't know is my answer. Like, I hope that, like, I really do just want to serve. Like, I want people to feel like I was the person that was there for them no matter what they needed. And like, and I mean that too, even in like, again, I have a passion for helping business owners, like entrepreneurs, like for my clients. Like, I mean that when I say that. Or for my friends. Like, I just want people to say like that I had a huge heart and like listen to them like they'd never been heard before. Or I don't know, just that I was like, could be kind for them. And that I inspired them. Here's another thing. This actually really gets me fired up. I want everyone to live their biggest, dreamiest life ever. And like, I say this to my friends all the time when they call me and ask for advice. It's like, if you were living your most dreamy life, like what decision would you choose then?
Sure.
Because like literally you can do anything on this planet. And like, I want to inspire people to get that fired up and know that I would bust through a wall to help them get there. So it's like, live large, dream big, try a million things. And if you fail at, every single one of them, like that was a good ass life. And like, I would be their number one fan there, cheering them on, being like, hell yes, you tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. That gets me fired up. But like, what do I do with that?
I love that. I love that. So I actually just heard somebody, he was actually a podcast guest a couple episodes ago, Seth. He said something today that really resonated with me and I think is a perfect segue and relates exactly to what you're saying here. And it's the thing that he said was default to action. And so when you're thinking about doing something, when you're thinking about trying something, whether it's for business or for life, your default should be action, because what they say about the successful people, and this is like a rough quote of what he said basically, but what they say about the successful people is that they failed more than the not successful people even tried, basically. And so each time we do something and we fail, we learn a lesson, we go a different direction, we try something different. But if you're always defaulting to action, but it's hard though, because there's not only a fear of failure, there's also, weirdly enough, a fear of success. And it's like, what are we going to do if we're successful? And I think as entrepreneurs, as sales people who you can kind of control your own destiny, I think those things really stand out. And so I think being able to default to action go try things that scare you a little bit, like this podcast for me, or, whatever you have on your plate. I think that that's really important, and encouraging people to do that, I think, can be really, really powerful. And I think that beats, imperfect action always beats perfect inaction, I think, is kind of the way to look at it. So I love that. I really like that concept. But yeah, I think I'm so sorry to hear about those 2 funerals. That's never fun, but it gives you good perspective, I think, because we do get like tunnel vision, which can be hard in a lot of ways, because it distracts us, and 2020 has been a good, I think, way to kind of pull ourselves out and kind of reprioritize and get new perspective on things.
Yeah, and it's like the busyness doesn't get you an award. It doesn't make you better than somebody else. It doesn't make you more productive. The things that you do don't make you who you are. It's how you show up in the world. It's how you, like, you're in a really uncomfortable situation, or someone on your team at work isn't pulling their weight, or a conversation with your spouse. Like, it's how you show up in those moments when shit is hitting the fan. It's like, can you show up and be kind and have a big heart? Like, that is really the stuff that people will remember. And like, when you wake up in the morning, like, how are you spending your days? And like, what's your, like, I do think it's important for all of us to have like our own like mission statement in a way.
Absolutely.
I don't have one. So if you had that follow-up question, but I'm working on it.
No, and I think this conversation is really good, because I don't think a lot of us, especially younger people, we don't think about this 20 or 30-year legacy very often. And we have to remember that 20 or 30-year legacy is created by the individual actions that we choose to do. Like, our individual moments make up our legacy, like those individual moments, that's what we choose to do. And so I think that's kind of a big takeaway for me after doing a number of episodes of this, is just that having a vision for 20 years from now allows us to kind of shape our actions today, which can be super valuable. So yeah, I think we're all kind of working on our value statement, our mission statement, and it's never really done. It's never really completed. But hopefully at the end, everybody says some things that we'd like to hear at our funeral, kind of saying, he, whatever he or she accomplished was exactly what we set out to do. So cool. Awesome. Well, any closing thoughts? I mean, I appreciate you being on here, Lyndsay. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook?
I love it. Wow. Well, we were joking about this before we started the recording, that normally people aren't calling us. No, I'm joking. I am on LinkedIn, Lyndsay Zwirlein. Just got new headshots, so go check that out. I'm wearing a pink shirt because that is part of my brand. I'm always wearing pink normally. I should have done that today. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, but I'm not that active on social media. I'm trying to slow down with that.
Cool. And you're doing yoga, exercise classes, CrossFit, those sorts of things too, right?
Yeah, come work out with me. That always makes my day. I love sharing that with people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If anybody can keep up with you, that is probably, huh?
I'm getting old now.
Do they have a dad bod class?
Yeah, all levels are welcome.
Perfect. That's the one I'll sign up for. So awesome. Well, Lyndsay, thank you so much for being on. It was a pleasure having you. Great thoughts. It's good to talk to you as always, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Cool. Thanks, Lyndsay.
See ya.